Gaza, the Trump Hotel and Casino, Gaza Strip. But is it America first? Thinking out loud, not with expertise, but trying to be smart and thoughtful and understanding. Thinking out loud, Trump's declaration that the United States would take an ownership position in Gaza. Plus, former Congressman, Dr. Ron Paul. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, terrestrial radio, some 36 markets across the great United States of America, but always on demand by subscribing at Apple or on Spotify. Or join us every Monday through Thursday live right here at Fox News YouTube. Hit subscribe, set a reminder, jump into the comments section, become a member of the Willisha. Before we jump into what I think today is a bit of a freewheeling show, freewheeling but immediate, hopefully thoughtful, and also evergreen, I want to touch on what I think is one of the biggest media scandals in recent memory. Earlier this week, the Trump administration essentially shut down, defunded, and moved within the purview of the State Department, USAID. Now, if I asked you, what was USAID? Odds are you would think USAID was something that was helping get AIDS treatments to people in Uganda. That USAID is stepping up for a humanitarian cause in places of need. And there are times and places where that was part of the mission and executed for USAID. But what's become increasingly clear is USAID was doing much, much more with their budget of $40 billion. Noted neocon Bill Kristol, I think, notoriously tweeted earlier this week that he'd rather have the deep state than the Trump state, referencing the attack on USAID. It didn't take long for many to point out that Bill Kristol's organizations were some of the NGOs being funded by USAID. USAID's list of things that it was involved in at this point is hard to parse fiction from reality. I saw a post suggesting that the Lord of the Rings Season 3 series on Amazon all of a sudden had to be canceled because it was in part funded by a grant from USAID. Fake news, not true. But it's hard to parse what's real and what's fake because so much of what was real seems fake. I give you one of the biggest media scandals in recent memory. Politico, the self-purported nonpartisan objective media property covering the ins and outs of Washington, D.C., suddenly this week missed a payment period. Employees working for Politico didn't receive their paychecks. Why? Well, many pointed out, it's just a glitch in the payment system. But the glitch seems to have followed a revelation. The revelation that Politico was being funded by USAID to the tune of $8.1 million per year. That's a pretty significant chunk of revenue on what I could only assume. If I had to guess the revenue for Politico, I guess I would put, and I don't know, I guess I would put the over-under in the range of $100 million in gross revenue. It could be north. I believe it has some subscription services. And it's possible that these $8.1 million are professional subscription services to governmental organizations. But either way, that's an incredible funding percentage dedicated, even if it's $200 million, even if it's $300 million. It would take it from roughly 10% down to 2%. That is a significant revenue driver within a media organization. If you had an advertiser that was responsible for 5% of your budget, that advertiser, I assure you, is going to be able to call the president of the company and have some opinions heard about what goes on. The U.S. government, USAID, was funding Politico, and I assure you, had some vested interest and influence over the coverage of Politico. It's an incredible media scandal. And it should, and I imagine it will, continue the assault on permanent Washington, government largesse, waste and fraud within the federal government that I would hope soon for the Trump administration begins to encompass things like PBS and NPR. Kids are taught, I know this for a fact, that the only true objective source of news out there is something like NPR, which is on its face absurd. Listen to it for 10 minutes. But also, look who's funding it. Do you think there is any influence on the coverage that makes it objective when one of your biggest funders are what you're supposed to be covering? The left likes to say that the purpose of journalism is to speak truth to power. But it's not the purpose of journalism. It's not, in the famous words of H.L. Mencken, to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. It's simple. Tell the truth. Are you telling the truth when your major funder is that what you're supposed to be covering? The United States government. I want to get to one I think is the biggest stories in, well, this time, decades. Yesterday, President Donald Trump invited in Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the White House. They sat down. They held a couple of press conferences. They had some conversations. And then Trump dropped a bomb. Watch.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
U.S. will take over and take ownership of the Gaza Strip. Huge. And what to make of something so huge? I read everything I could get my hands on. I read every article. I read every tweet. There is only one that resonated with me. There was only one point of view that truly piqued my interest. And it was former Dilbert cartoonist Scott Adams. He said the following about this story. He said, I hate that sleeping on this changed my opinion. First reaction, hell no. I hate everything about this. Current opinion, Trump just ended a permanent war between Hamas and Israel by informing them they will no longer have a common border, one way or another. It's not a bluff, but it will have the effect of sharpening the thinking of everyone in the region. I'd expect some frantic counteroffers. In his inimitable way, Trump is generating new options in a land that had none, and he's doing it by presenting himself as the common enemy to both sides. Here I am assuming Israel's government is choking on this idea too. The last thing I want is the USA owning Gaza, but it's also the last thing all of the countries in the region want. Something productive could come out of it. No expertise, no opinion struck me this morning and last night as worthy. No personal insult to anyone who today has a hot take. There is no way that you can look at this situation and come away with certainty. There is no way you can look at an intractable war, not quite a century old, can all of a sudden meet with dismissal something so outside the box. There is no way that I or anyone could or should sit down with you today and pound the table one way or another on the United States owning Gaza. You just have to think it out loud. I have to be open-minded. I have to consider all angles. Here's where my mind runs. One, I hate it. I hate the idea of the United States jumping in to the biggest mess on the planet. I hate it. Why would you, after 20 years of Afghanistan and Iraq, reinsert yourself into something that has been imminently unsolvable? How does it serve America first? Two, the other side of me says, you are involved. Don't be naive. The United States has always been involved. Every peace deal, every accord, every negotiation. We're already hated by Iran because of our role in the Middle East, because of our relationship with Israel. Don't be naive. We already are involved. There is no position of neutrality. You're already there. Back to the other side, number three. Yeah, but you don't have boots on the ground. You don't have EODs walking through Gaza, dismantling ordnance that you didn't place there, that Israel put there. 4, what are you freaking out for? None of this is real. Have you learned nothing from Art of the Deal? Trump begins with a maximalist position. And somewhere later down the line, he finds a position that is acceptable to all involved, most notably America. 6, trust Trump. I mean it. That's not sycophantic. That's not in a cult. That's not on a team. Trust Trump. Why wouldn't I trust Trump? I'm serious. I think there's always a role for someone who's a healthy skeptic in society, but most healthy skeptics in society, when it comes to Donald Trump, have turned into victims of TDS. They think he's a clown. They think he's insane. They think he's stupid. They're clownish, insane, and then stupid. Trump, as Van Jones has said, is smarter than everyone. Trump, I don't care anymore what you think. He's playing 8D chess. Don't doubt Donald Trump. Where's this going? 7, maybe for something that's been intractable for 100 years, it requires a completely out-of-the-box idea. Maybe for something that no expert who is today dismissing Donald Trump, from the left or the right, who scoffs and laughs, maybe no expert's idea has ever been implemented to success. Sit any of them down. Name your expert. Have you succeeded in the Middle East? Have you succeeded when it comes to Israel and Gaza? Have any of your ideas worked? Maybe then you shouldn't sit here today so jaded and scoffing. Maybe when a man comes in with something completely off your radar, you should at a minimum listen. Hey, I don't know still how it serves America first. I really don't know how this helps the people of America. I don't care about winning a Nobel Peace Prize. I don't know that, solving this problem is pertinent to the issues of the people of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I don't know how this helps the middle class. I don't know how this helps us transition into the technological revolution. I don't know what this does for America. 9, maybe we just need someone outside the box. Maybe we need someone who, as Scott Adams points out, becomes the common enemy. Herb Brooks is famously the coach of the 1984 U.S. Olympic hockey team. Herb Brooks is the one responsible for the legendary Miracle on Ice. Now there's been movies made about it, Al Michaels' legendary call, where the U.S. beat the Soviets. He had a problem when he took over the U.S. Olympic hockey team. Half the team was from Michigan and half the team was from the Northeast. That was a huge rivalry in hockey. They hated each other. Seriously, they didn't get along. Fist fought during practice. What did Herb Brooks do? He became the meanest, ugliest, biggest enemy of all the players. They hated Herb Brooks. But he did it on purpose. Why? Because if they had a common bad guy, they could together then morph together, heal, and become good guys. They could become a team. Did Trump just turn everyone with diametrically polar positions and mutual hatred into focusing on the United States instead of each other? And maybe then, therefore, there is some common ground? Where am I? I don't even know now. 10? I don't want to be the world's bad guy. I don't want to be the world's Herb Brooks. 11, you already are. Don't be naive. I don't know, man. I know I'm up to 12. All I'm telling you is I think this is so outside the box, and it would be so remedial and stupid to dismiss it as stupid. I think it, on its face, offends my idea of America first, but I have to respect that Trump has been playing a level of chess and the art of the deal. You don't know what's coming around the corner. I do know there are meetings coming up with the King of Jordan, with Saudi Arabia, with Egypt. There's more coming. There's more coming every day, and nobody can keep up. And if you want to freak out about this, wait 6 hours. It's not even 24 hours. Wait 6 hours. This might be exactly the kind of crazy that is genius. I don't know. And maybe you end up with Trump Hotel and Casino on the Gaza Strip. Yesterday, I sat down with former Congressman Dr. Ron Paul. This interview occurred before the announcement by Trump. So we didn't get into that, and I want to tell you that ahead of time. But Congressman Ron Paul sat down with me for almost 40 minutes to talk about everything under the sun, including what a noted libertarian, very influential thinker, a lot of influence today over DOGE, and planted the seeds for much of the direction we are headed right now in America, what he thinks of Donald Trump. Ron Paul coming up on the Will Cain Show. But first, we've partnered with Gundry MD to share information with you. Would you believe me if I told you inside your pantry right now is one of the healthiest foods on the planet? Yep, it's true. And it's not some weird, trendy superfood. Spoiler alert, though, it's olive oil. You're probably used to cooking with it, but there are countless ways to use olive oil to help yourself look and feel younger. For example, olive oil is natural. It's a way to help you achieve a more youthful appearance. Besides helping you look younger on the outside, it's a fantastic tool for your insides as well. According to Dr. Stephen Gundry, a famous cardiothoracic surgeon, nutrition expert, health advocate, you should get as much high-quality olive oil into your daily routine as possible, whether it's taking a shot of it daily or keeping a bottle of it in your bathroom medicine cabinet. But what kind of olive oil is best for your health? Well, any olive oil can give you some benefits. But if you're looking to get the best results, it matters a lot which one you pick. The olive oil industry is huge. You can tell by the number of olive oil brands you see at the grocery store. And you can bet they're not all made with the consumer in mind. And many brands may even cut corners one way or another to increase profits. When Dr. Gundry came to this realization, he was appalled. But some olive oils are so powerful, it only takes a few tablespoons a week to see these incredible benefits. So how can you tell between an olive oil that can be a health booster and which one isn't up to par? In an effort to answer that question, Dr. Gundry decided to take a stand and release his personal research and findings. And this video has gone viral since its release, and it's important you see it so you can start benefiting immediately. You can watch the video right now by going to getolive1.com/will or click on the link in the description box below. That's getolive1.com/will. Or just click on the link in the description box below. People have taken his advice and have shared their results with him, saying the olive oil they bought after learning his simple rule has helped change their lives. Make sure you go to getolive1.com/WILL or click on the link in the description box below this video. Up next, Dr. Ron Paul on The Will Cain Show. Former Congressman Dr. Ron Paul in just moments here on The Will Cain Show. Streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, on the Fox News Facebook page. Hey, I know you're out there right now. I know you're in the comments section. Two-a-days tells me the comment section is extremely divided on the U.S., according to Donald Trump, quote, taking an ownership in Gaza. I'm interested in all of your comments. We'll be working through those this week. I think this issue is one that requires us to have an absolutely wide open discussion. And we're going to do that today at 4 o'clock on the Fox News channel. I have said to my producer, I want to do something different. I don't trust experts. I don't trust a monologue. I want to have as many different points of view as possible. I don't care if you're shuttling them in and out. I don't care if you put them all up on the screen at the same time. I want to hear everyone's thoughts, including yours, on this issue of the United States taking over Gaza, according to Donald Trump. Yesterday, I had the chance to sit down with, I think, one of the most influential thought leaders of at least the last 20 years. Former Congressman Ron Paul ran for president several times, developed a cult following, became one of the leaders of essentially a libertarian school of thought that led to, I think, the Tea Party, in part, and has certainly played a role in whatever guides America first. I think it's a practical form of politics. It incorporates libertarianism, conservatism, paleoconservatism, paleo-libertarianism. It's truly not on the ideological spectrum. It simply asks what serves America first. But there is no doubt the influence is there. In fact, he's playing a role when it comes to DOGE of Dr. Ron Paul. So I was excited to sit down with him yesterday before this news about Gaza, where we talked many issues. Here is former Congressman Dr. Ron Paul. Dr. Ron Paul is the host of Ron Paul Liberty Report. He's chairman and founder of the Ron Paul Institute. He's former congressman from the great state of Texas, and he joins us now on the Will Cain Show. Dr. Paul, great to see you.
Will, nice to be with you.
I am curious to start, and I don't know that you and I have ever spoken before. I've been doing this for 14 or 15 years. I had plenty of opportunities, I think, to cross paths with you, certainly when you were in public service. But this might be the first time we've spoken. I, of course, have followed you closely and deeply. I've spoken to your son on numerous occasions. But as you look at the world today, here we are, 2025, I'm curious just how you would describe how you feel. Do you feel hopeful? Do you feel fretful? Do you feel vindicated?
I feel that I have to answer that as a matter of when, tomorrow or the next day or a year from now or at the end of this term or the big trends. And I think there was a big trend starting back in the progressive era that has practically destroyed our country. And there was a vicious coup in the 1960s with all the assassination, and we're at dead end. I think the debt is out of control, the spending's out of control, and I keep my fingers crossed because there's an honest effort to do something. But philosophically is where I'm the most optimistic. I believe the philosophy of liberty and the philosophy of libertarianism, of limited government, which it just happens that our founders believe strongly in, I'm optimistic there. I think there's a revival of this. You know, the Marxists, the cultural Marxists, want to do what the Marx says: destroy the society and have riots in the streets and chaos, and then we'll clean up the mess. But we have to clean it up. And I said, yes. Under this circumstance, I hold out for a bit of optimism, saying, yes, they're winning. But who's going to pick up the pieces? And my effort is to put an effort into promoting the liberty that we once held sacred. So I am both. Long term, I'm very optimistic. I think we're winning a lot of fights. I witnessed how I was received in Congress in 1965, 1976. I won a special election, and I'll tell you what, they were friendly to me, but they were dumbfounded. Why'd you do that? And now it's different because people in major campaigns now, they know that my influence is limited. But they also like it. You know, right. It seems like if I endorse what they're doing, they get a little more credibility. So in that sense, things have changed, but I think for the positive.
So you said a lot in that answer. You touched on a broad scope of history, which I do want to dive into from the progressive era to the 1960s. But I want to stay on current events for just one moment. And again, in a moment, I think I will dive into cultural Marxism. But I want to stick with this idea that you fought for a long time. This is maybe, in a way, your least ideological fight and your most practical fight. And that was about government spending, government employment, the size of the Leviathan, the size of the bureaucracy. I know that you are at least in touch with and influencing DOGE and Elon Musk. As you look up today under the presidency of Donald Trump, in my lifetime, Dr. Paul, I don't think I've ever seen something as radical as what we're seeing today. I'll say I know it's not yet that radical, but that's why it's so insane where we've been, because it is radical, meaning, USAID, FBI agents, DOJ, they're going to look at Treasury, apparently, the Department of Education and the EPA, as just an example, are all people expecting personnel to be fired. In your career as well, this has to be a moment of, wow, for the first time ever, are we actually seeing substantial cutback of the behemoth?
Yes and no. There will be cuts. But I think the problem is bigger than they're willing to admit. Now, Trump the other day said something that he says, there's going to be some rough spots. It's not all going to be easy. And that to me is an understatement, because I look at $36 trillion worth of debt, the spending, the deficit, how many people. I was kidding somebody the other day. I'm going to start an organization and I want to have a group of people to join me, and they've never received a check from government. And, all of a sudden, that's a lot of people. So no, it is going to be very, very difficult. And I believe that debt and malinvestment that comes from the deeply flawed monetary policy has to be liquidated. You're not going to get away with spending that money. We've been blessed, so to speak, that we have the reserve currency of the world. and we have the military power never seen before. But I think it's all very, very risky, and all great nations in. Ronald Reagan, I've had a few conversations with him, and I remember one private conversation with him. He says, Ron, he says, any country, any great nation that has ever given up the gold standard has never remained great. And I keep thinking about that. And that is, he's talking about sound money, because to me, I put tremendous amount of emphasis on the monetary system, financing, everything you've just mentioned. It wouldn't happen if you couldn't print money and we didn't have this artificial temporary power and influence. So that's why I deal mostly in the area of education.
Right. How do you feel in general about the presidency of Donald Trump? I know you probably have deep disagreements. I can only anticipate how you feel about his current, I shouldn't say implementation, because so far he's used it as a tactic of tariffs. But how do you feel in general about the presidency of Donald Trump?
Well, first, what most people do is compared to what? So when you compare him to our previous president, wow, this is sensational. And even the last 30, 40 years that has happened, a lot of talk like this, but never any action. And that's why I'm concerned. I keep my fingers crossed, because we had many votes in Congress when we would bring up a budget or something, and then we would have a vote on what we have to do is work on and concentrate on getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. And I wasn't very optimistic, but I'll tell you what, it never happened. And that's why. But I do think that what's happening now is much closer to it happening, and there'll be all degrees. None of us get everything we want completely. So I would say, I think this recognition of the total failure of the progressive era and progressivism and all this nonsense, I think the charges made against Trump, I said, yes, but when the jury had a chance to give a verdict, I says, I think we know what the jury said. And that to me was encouraging, but there's a lot of it, because I think of treating a cancer patient, how rough it is. And you never know what is, and the medicine is tough. And right now, there's still a lot of it. We've already heard it, some of the Republicans, saying, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do this. But I think the fundamentals have to be changed. People have to believe and understand why the cause of liberty is important. We own our own lives, and we should not be controlled by our government. And a lot of the college groups I talk to, they say, well, what should we do? And I says, well, it's a big job, and it's going to be rough. But why don't we all start by reading the Constitution? And that's just think of the nonsense and the ridicule that they put on the Constitution, and they just march on and do it. Just think how many wars we fought without a declaration of war. And where did they get the money? Oh, well, we printed it. We're rich, and we have all the weapons.
Right. How do you see Donald Trump in terms of, you already invoked, and you've been open, you own your libertarianism as an ideology. You brought up the progressive movement, which is an ideological movement. And again, I want to go into that more in a minute. It's hard not to just look at Donald Trump as practical. I don't know that he's driven by any ideology other than I do think there is a thematic tie that binds. He seems to be interested in making the best deal he thinks is possible for America. Do you think he's incorporated into that a lot of libertarian thought? Would you describe him as conservative? What do you think guides Donald Trump?
I think he's a genius in politics and getting attention. When it comes to if you're going to evaluate it from Mises and Rothbard on how much success and what his beliefs are, not so high. But he's on our side. I'm amazed. Why? I've been out of Congress for 12 years. I never had a bill passed, and I'm a political sense, I'm a nobody. I couldn't get a committee chairmanship or all this, but still people are interested in the ideas, and I think ideas have consequences. And one thing is if an idea's time has come, you can't stop it by armies. And I see the idea of liberty, it's getting a rebirth. There was a birth at the time of our Constitution and our revolution against the British, and I think we're going through this, and Trump in many ways is leading the charge, but in many ways his practical approach of getting attention is great. I think the technical things that are important to me, it has to be ironed out. But certainly, I think the effort and the people out there, I say, boy, that's great. So we do our Liberty Report every day, and we almost always want to look for the positive thing, and then we do, point out, well, this is not quite the right thing to do economically, because right now, there's a lot of talk of spending, but I'll wait for 1 or 2 years and see if the deficit has gone down any.
And that's going to be tied up in what they do in the legislature a lot. We'll see what is accomplished with whatever they can do when it comes to the legislative side of this agenda. You brought up cultural Marxism. If you and I had this conversation certainly 5 years ago, maybe even a year or two ago, it probably would have had a much more pessimistic tone. I would have felt like cultural Marxism is on the march. And I think I have a unique perspective on that, Dr. Paul, in that I spent some time in a world outside of politics. I spent some time in sports. And so what you're doing when you're talking about sports is you are swimming in the deep waters of our culture, I think. And I saw a total infiltration of the ideologies, perhaps for many people unknowingly. They weren't knowingly participating in cultural Marxism, but they had been co-opted by cultural Marxism. And then in a short amount of time, it feels like the pendulum swung hard back the other way. Do you think it has swung? And do you think there's any type of permanence to that swing?
Well, one thing I think people are recognizing is what we've had to put up with for over 100 years has failed. I think that's what the election was all about, the failure of it. And I hope, and I keep talking to myself, I hope this is the climactic failure of the system that I've been contenting with. And that I think is very good. But I don't think that Marxism, yes, on the surface it is, but I see on the undermine, when Roosevelt ran in 1932, he ran on a very conservative, keep the gold standard, balance the budget, and do all these things, stay out of war. But undermine it were the universities. The people were being taught a different system. And this is why, symbolically at least, this attack and a challenge that Trump's making against the Department of Education, I think is great. And that's where it has to happen, because it's bringing up a generation. This is why I enjoyed so much going to the campuses and the campaigns. I ran national campaigns, and I thought, well, I still, politically speaking, I'm not much of a person, but the young people, they were so enthusiastic that I couldn't believe it. Berkeley campus was my biggest rally. And to me, the young people are open. And I always kid, yeah, the young people are, but I have trouble with the Chamber of Commerce is where I have problem. When are you going to get our stuff into the budget?
Let's talk about that progressive movement. You brought up Roosevelt in the 30s and the colleges. Let's just do a short history for people, because I don't think a lot of people fully understand. They think of progressivism as a term, maybe even a cudgel that you use when you talk about the opposite side from whatever side you might consider yourself. But this is a concerted political movement, ideological movement that became a political movement. And tell me if I have my history right. Probably starting in the 19-teens. Is that the advent of the progressive movement, somewhere shortly before Woodrow Wilson?
Yeah, Woodrow Wilson and Teddy Roosevelt, they ushered that in, and it built. And then Soros really had a climactic interference, and he knew what was going on. And look at the influence he's had in. Did he go after the Supreme Court? I'm sure he would, but he went after the lower level judicial system, and that's why it's such a mess. So that's why I think in 2 days or so, or more problems won't solve the problem. You have to get to a whole generation of people, and but the seeds have to be sown. And when I was thinking, well, you accomplished anything? I said, probably not that much. But from my deep thinking about what happened, if I planted a seed here or there, that it would blossom and grow. And this is the reason. Before I went into politics, I love talking about it. I find it interesting and fascinating. To me, it's an issue of morality. It's an issue of telling the truth and nihilism. And I saw this as just fantastic. But when I'd go to the colleges before I was in office and a politician, I got 15 people together sometimes, but they were all so serious. They were all introduced to libertarianism. And quite frankly, libertarianism isn't one of my favorite words. Liberty is, and yet the 15, it ended up those 15. Many of them have their own programs, and especially the ones that came out of the presidential campaign. I mean, there's a lot of people out there. I'll have calls constantly, and they're small radio programs and blogs and things like that. So I will talk to them, but they're out there. And as it's been once said, you can't count the remnant. I believe there's a remnant out there. I believe the remnant of the true believers of liberty is growing. And I think this whole thing on communications, I'm not a computer guy, but boy, do I love the information that you can have and spread. Sometimes instead of 15 people, sometimes I get 1,500 people, and sometimes a few more than that. And I said, well, how did that happen? Because I still see myself as being pretty low key, dealing with esoteric ideas, and yet the young people like the ideas of liberty. And a lot of times I'd finish my speech with, freedom is popular. That's it.
You are way too humble, reinforcing to us several times how you didn't get much accomplished as a politician, but you continually seem to be surprised by your influence outside of your votes on the House floor. It's not a surprise to me how much influence that you've had for people, like you say, planting seeds on their ideas. Back to the progressive movement for one moment. What I think a lot of people don't appreciate, Dr. Paul, is also the concerted and structural push of that movement from, for example, the Soviet Union. Because it wasn't just an American movement. It was actually everywhere. It was Pan-African. It was in Western Europe. And the Soviet Union was helping to educate and push many of the ideological flag bearers for progressivism everywhere you went. And so when you arrive in the 1960s at the Black Panther Party or whatever, and they're preaching Marxism, there's a reason they're doing that. It got there by design. But you brought up a name that I don't totally get, and that's George Soros. I don't know, actually, what animates George Soros. I don't know what his goal is. Is he a Marxist? What is his end vision?
I think deep down inside he's an authoritarian, and he probably mixes it in with this sentiment of being wanting to help the poor people, the old ideas of liberalism. It's all for the sake, improving the community and helping the people that are the underdogs. But I think also he's been instrumental in he's sort of the opposite of Trump. Trump knows how to rally people, and Soros did it in a very, very serious way. And to me, it was education and getting hold of people in colleges and all. The other thing that the cultural revolutionaries have done is destroy language, because, progressive. I love the word progressive. I want to be progressive, but no, even liberal. I remember one of my first speeches back in the 70s. I was given. I mentioned something about liberalism in Texas, and they said, "Don't ever use that word again." I was but I was referring to classical liberty, right, because so many of the great libertarians called themselves liberals, and the classical liberal sense.
Yeah, co-opting language, changing the meaning of words is integral to the project, by the way. You said this earlier. I put it off because I had my conversation in my head that I'm following every step sequentially here, but I knew I was going to come back. The coups of the 1960s you brought up. Tell me what you're talking about. I think I can fill in the gaps. I'm sure you're talking about the intelligence community. I'm sure you're talking about JFK. Tell me about what you mean by the coups of the 1960s.
Well, I wrote a pamphlet. Somebody see it tells. Some people will mention I write books, and I tell people I don't want to take credit for writing books. I don't have any footnotes or anything like that, but I do have books and booklets, and one of the last things I've written a couple years ago was the surreptitious coup, and I start with my personal closeness in a way because I was in the Air Force when he arrived at Kelly Air Force Base less than 24 hours before he was assassinated. And then the assassinations and on the front page of my little booklet, there's RFK and JFK and Martin Luther King. And then I think this whole thing of the FBI and CIA, and I've read everything I could get, and I am totally convinced, and as they are 80% of the people, they don't believe Oswald did it. And that the coup was the taking over our judicial system, and the secrecy, and in many ways they won a lot, and they have developed it. So that I think was instrumental, and I thought, well, all I have to do is undermine that and destroy it and compete with it. So I talk about, the whole fact that people live with lying and natural law and the consequence. I'm fascinated with reading about natural law, which I think was known with the first. Before they even had books to write, people understood what right and wrong were all about. And then I understand the other side, which is extreme, and neither side is, all 100%. The other extreme is nihilism. I've heard it. Some of these people who talk religion, they really are nihilists because they're mostly anti-religious too. And I think that they believe lying there's nothing wrong with it. But natural law teaches, and is very emphatic in all cultures. But I think there was a dramatic change,
right,
of course, 2,000 years ago, and has played a significant part in civilization.
That's another separate, fascinating conversation about natural law. It's if not its establishment, its advancement 2,000 years ago, and then the fact that it spans cultures. But I want to stick with JFK for a moment. You said to corrupt the judicial system. From what I've always understood, the theory about the role of the intelligence community, the FBI and the CIA, was that JFK began to represent a threat to dismantling those communities after the Bay of Pigs. What I'm asking you is, if that's your theory, if that's what you believe, that he was the victim of a coup by, I assume what you're suggesting is the United States intelligence community, what's the motive you're saying? Why would they want to do away with JFK?
Well, I think there is a military-industrial complex, and I think Kennedy had changed his position because I also remember his campaign when he was running the missile gap. So he ran and talked conservatively, and he was like that. But in his last year, he was influenced by a certain female friend that was a real influence on him becoming more attuned to the message of peace. And so I think he was really into that. I think the military complex, and he said, and I can remember even hearing this, it annoyed me to a degree, but it was sort of, he says, I gotta do this, be conservative, but as soon as the election's over, I am going to stop that war. And I think that, I think it was militarism, foreign policy. Just look at the strength of our interventionist foreign policy. How many dollars have been spent just causing trouble around the world? You say, well, so-and-so, they just bombed and killed these number of people, but almost always with our method, with our weapons, because we have, I work on the assumption that there's an empire out there, and it might be a little bit different than other empires, but the empire is working very hard to maintain its strength. And I think really the Trump administration, whether they think about it in this way or not, they are a threat to the establishment. And that was obviously the case on how he treated the people. The great thing is the people didn't buy into it. And even the assassination, 80% of the American people don't believe it was Oswald. But people didn't believe all those lies told. But those people telling those lies, that was part of their philosophy. That was good. That was political. That was pragmatic. Who can lie the best? And when you think back, when I think about all this demagoguing that goes on, it still happens. And you can't get people to be independent minded. There's a couple there now still that will be, but I think that's the whole issue. People who happen to believe in a natural law that should guide them over and above even the Constitution, and also the people who have accepted the idea that nihilism is a useful tool and you guys don't know anything about truth. You can't know truth. And I say, well, everybody knows truth, and they've all been introduced to it, and it is sorting that out. But both sides are imperfect. Neither side's in control, but I think that contest that goes on constantly.
Yeah, I get where you're headed with the nihilism thing. I think you're absolutely right. We got to be careful, because nihilism, while we have pushed back on cultural Marxism, nihilism might be on the rise on both sides. And you got to be careful. In other words, you believe in nothing. You believe in no truth. You believe in no laws. You only believe in power. And that's a dangerous fire that can burn out of control. You know, I like you bringing up Trump as well, because he was the greatest threat to the establishment. That's clearly and obviously true.
Right.
And you saw everything that was done to try to stop him. First, button up JFK. Do you think he said he's going to release JFK, RFK, MLK files? Do you think we'll learn anything? Will anything be revealed in that?
Well, I guess I'm more hopeful than ever before, but I don't think it's ever, and he's probably already hinted to it. It's not every single word, because there'll be something in there that will hold them back. So I think that we'll get more than we've ever had before, and that there'll be something held back, and who will know what was held back, and that's too. That's too cynical. But I just am doubtful that we'll see every single thing that went on. I mean, it's just.
What do you think,
likely.
Dr. Paul? What do you think happens now with Donald Trump? Because, as we said, maybe since JFK, I don't know that there's ever been another threat on the level of Donald Trump to the establishment. So now here he is executing on the promises, executing on the threat. You know, he's taken away the security clearances for 51 intelligence agents, said they can't go in federal buildings. He's firing FBI agents. He is directly attacking whatever we want to call it, the deep state, the establishment, whatever. I cannot imagine it just takes it. We know it didn't take it over the last 8 years. We know the ways that it was pushed back on in the last 8 years. What's the response now from the establishment to Donald Trump?
Well, I'm still cautiously optimistic, because the hints coming out of the administration still means that, one thing that they've used before is to say, we don't need any foreign aid and this sort of thing. They're cutting back. But there's hints now that doesn't indicate to me that they're going to cut foreign aid totally. It'll be pick and choosing. Maybe different sides will be out there. But the principle is that government has no right to come and take money from you or me to go over and support one faction. We've been involved in most of the coups in the last 50 years, ever since World War II. I don't think the war in Ukraine was Russia invading it, but 99% of the reports say Russia invaded Ukraine. And here it was NATO that schemed that whole thing up. I mean, we were involved in a coup that threw out a Russian sympathizer that was the elected president. He got rid of him, and after the United States promising we would never move NATO or anybody up to your borders. So that has not changed yet.
What do you think of American expansionism, like this idea with Canada, with the Panama Canal, and Greenland?
Well, I'm a strong believer in expansionism of ideas because I think, ideas spread and you can't stop them. And they're the only thing that really count. But if you suggest that you have to use force, a person that believes in liberty says you can't initiate force or violence against somebody else just because you think you know better for them. Maybe they are doing wrong. Maybe somebody thinks that that people shouldn't use marijuana. It's bad for them. Yeah, that's true. It's bad for them. But what do you want to do? Make prohibition like alcohol? No, you have to educate. You have to deal with it. And if anybody commits a crime, then you have to deal with it. But you cannot use violence. And everything that we do in government almost is, under our system, there can't possibly be an income tax. The income tax and the draft are the two big issues that say the government owns us. Because I was drafted, I wasn't bitter, I went and did what I had to do. But the government owned me because they said you had to go. And now, and also the tax works on ownership. What you earn today, they're going to pay you $100 for today's work. Maybe he'll pay you a little bit more. Gives you $100, and you say, "Oh, I made $100. I'm going to go spend it." No, you have to pay taxes on that. And what do? They have 100% control of that $100, and they will give you permission on how and when and what you're going to do to spend it. So that is a vicious violation of the basic principles of liberty. And if you want to go one more step, it's property too. Just owning your property. People think they own their own houses as a good investment. We don't own our own houses. All states collect taxes. Everybody collects taxes. So we pay rent in order to keep and then follow all the rules. And so changing the rules and tinkering around and say the EPA will eliminate it. But you have to go one step further and say they shouldn't even have the authority to do it, because there will always be those nihilists that come along, well, we don't know exactly what you should do, and we're smarter, and we have to take care of people, so we'll tell you how you can use your property. So the principle of non-aggression is all-encompassing. It applies to everything that we do.
What, if any, tax do you consider morally justifiable?
A voluntary tax. A
voluntary tax wouldn't be a tax.
Well, yeah. What if I build a highway?
It'd be charity.
What if I build a highway and you liked it, and I said, well, come on, give me $5. You can drive on my highway.
Okay. Toll road. So, yeah.
Toll roads. I think generally speaking, I'd be a little bit, more tolerant of that if you're paying voluntarily for a service of government. That would be better. But what happens is you pay for it. You pay for medical service, and I'm sure you know that people aren't very happy with their medical service right now, mainly because the government runs it.
Would you be more morally open to a consumption tax than you are to an income tax?
I'm open to a zero tax. No, consumption tax. Yeah, the consumption tax is what if I don't drink beer? Are you going to tax the beer for the people who do drink beer? No, consumption or sales taxes. It's just up for mischief. What is that? It's good for the lobbying business. So you change the rules like that. I was told once when I first went to Congress, they were have a big tax bill up, and they say, "Oh, the tax people love this because the lobbyists get busy and they get busy, and they say we got to protect this."
Right.
That's going on even with Bitcoin right now. They have lobbyists now figuring out how they can best protect and motivate. And I'm all hoping for freedom of choice, and especially in competition and money. But right now, there's lobbyists for people to draw up the rules on even Bitcoin, which was supposed to be built for, privacy. And that's why you don't give them an inch, they'll take a mile.
Last one on taxes. How do you fund, though, something like a military?
A militia. I wouldn't have troops overseas. I wouldn't never have a draft. I think I find fascinating this whole argument about the transgenders, and I think Trump has addressed this subject already. Oh, we don't know whether you're a man or woman, and now we're for equality. So what we're going to do, we're going to make women equal by drafting them. Insanity. But take away more liberty from those people, and that's the way they'll do it. So no, you don't have drafts. You don't tell people. You don't regulate, even when they're harming themselves. Most of the time, oh yeah, we have to do this. People don't know any better, so we have to take care of them. And I think I want to finish with this. That one of the words that over the years that I've learned not to like is safety. We do this because we want to make you safe. We want to make you healthy. That's why we give you, just think how much goodness we did with COVID. We want you to be healthy, and on and on. And we want you to be safe.
You must have been horrified in 2020, Dr. Paul. Everything and every way the world went forward in 2020 must have horrified you.
Well, I had a good conditioning and not too shocked. But no, in a way, you're right. It was a bad year for those of us who would like to see it going. But right now, there's some good coming out of it. I think some of the doctors woke up. I always look for the good part. With Daniel and I, when doing our program, we have some bad news. This is happening, and I said, "Oh, Daniel, that's true." But this is so atrocious what they're doing. It's just going to wake up a couple more people today, and they're going to come our way and say, too much government is not very useful.
And that happened with COVID. COVID, Dr. Paul, terrified me and horrified me because I saw that otherwise rational people could be very manipulated, controlled, and then become enforcers themselves in service of fear. Fear, it became obvious to me, is the base primary motivation of a human being, more than greed, fear. And that became obvious through COVID. And then there was a response, and now we're seeing that response. But I'll never forget that, and it can happen again. Fear is the tool to control us all.
That's what we should learn.
Yeah. This is a great conversation, Dr. Paul. Thank you so much for spending so much time with me. As I said, you have an open invitation to all of my programs, wherever they may be. I would love to have you on anytime, Dr. Ron Paul.
Okay. Nice to be with you today.
What a conversation with the former Congressman Ron Paul, the thought leader, Ron Paul. Good news for sports fans. Good news for fans of the NFL. The NFL has decided to stop displaying the end racism mantra, branding, at the back of every end zone. I guess this means we've finally done it. We've ended racism. This, of course, was a virtue signal copied after a lot of European soccer leagues who've done something similar for years. It followed in the wake of the killing of George Floyd. It is fascinating to see the NFL move on from such a shallow and obvious virtue signal that does nothing to actually solve any deeper problems. But that didn't stop some from the left absolutely losing their mind. Professional mind loser. Keith Olbermann tweeted out, "I hope this kills you and your advertisers, NFL. How dare you?" Clay Travis, our friend over at Outkick and host of the Clay and Buck Show, put it perfectly. He said, "Hey, Keith, I've never seen you post anything about ending herpes. You've never once put it in your bio. You've never once posted about it on X. You've never flown the banner to end herpes. I can only assume by this very same rationale that you, Keith Olbermann, support herpes. Maybe we can all do away with shallow virtue signaling. We can actually do things to solve problems instead of give the pretense and image of solving a problem. End racism. Ended in the NFL. That's going to do it for us today here on the Will Cain Show. We will be live from the Super Bowl Friday, live on Bourbon Street. Make sure you join us for a special episode of the Will Cain Show streaming live right here at foxnews.com, the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, Spotify, and Apple.